There was a time when everything seemed to be falling apart. It wasn't just a job loss. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the collapse of everything I had worked for, everything I had built. You know, the feeling when the rug gets pulled out from under you and suddenly you're on your back gasping for air. I was there. I was knocked down left, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself, about life. It started small, just a few mistakes overlooked in the chaos of the workplace, the subtle signs of shifting alliances. Then one day, it all came crashing down. I walked into that office, the same office I'd trusted, the same place I thought was my secure foundation, and I was handed a pink slip. "We don't need you anymore." The words rang in my ears long after they had been said. The shock of it, the betrayal, it cut deeper than I cared to admit. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when I realized that it wasn't just the company that had turned its back on me. It was the people I had trusted. They knew. They knew everything I had given, all the hours I had put in. And still, when the opportunity presented itself, they pushed me aside without a second thought. They didn't care about the work, the commitment, or the sacrifice. In their eyes, I was just a tool discarded when no longer useful. That's when I hit rock bottom. I had nothing left. I had no job, no direction, no sense of self. It felt like I had lost everything. Every dream, every goal, it all slipped away. The fear of the unknown loomed over me like a dark cloud. But then came the moment of realization. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. And it wasn't going to be. I remember sitting in the silence of my apartment, staring at the wall, wondering how I would recover from this. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to be a victim of this situation. I wasn't going to let these people, these circumstances dictate my worth. It was time to fight back, not with anger, not with resentment, but with strategy. I started planning not just for survival, but for revenge. Not the kind you're probably thinking of. This wasn't about petty payback. This was about something much more powerful. I needed to reclaim everything they took from me. I needed to rebuild my life, but I would do it on my terms, not theirs. I would expose the truth, the betrayal, and I would make sure that those who had wronged me knew what it felt like to be held accountable. I remember the first step. It wasn't grand, it wasn't dramatic. It was small, gathering evidence, making the calls, and consulting with legal advisors. But the more I got into it, the more I realized something profound. This wasn't just about getting back at them. This was about restoring my sense of dignity. This was about proving to myself that no one could take that away from me again. And so I went forward quietly, deliberately. I filed the papers, I sent the emails, and I started telling my side of the story. I didn't need to shout or make a scene. I didn't need their approval or validation. I simply needed to take the first step. And that first step began a chain reaction that I couldn't have predicted. Weeks went by and things started to change. Slowly but surely, I began to feel the shift. The power I had once lost was coming back to me piece by piece. And it wasn't just the legal actions, the strategic moves. It was something deeper. It was me. I was the one who had taken control of my own narrative. I was the one who had chosen to rise above the wreckage and rebuild from the ashes. The moment of triumph came when the people who had betrayed me were finally exposed. The truth had come to light, and the consequences of their actions hit them like a freight train. They lost their power, their reputation, and their place in the industry. And me, I was standing tall. I had rebuilt myself, not just in terms of career, but in terms of who I was. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I was stronger. I was wiser. I was unstoppable. And as I stood there looking back on everything I had endured, I realized one thing. The most important thing wasn't about getting revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was worth more than the circumstances, more than their betrayal, more than the empty promises they had made. I had taken control of my life again, and no one could take that from me. So, if you're listening to this, if you're at the point where you've been knocked down, where you're questioning your worth, I want you to remember this. You owe it to yourself. Don't let anyone define your value. Don't let the mistakes or failures of the past dictate your future. You have the power to rise. You have the strength to rebuild. And most importantly, you have the ability to make them remember your name, not with bitterness, but with respect. Now, look forward. This is just the beginning. When everything falls apart, when it feels like the world is crumbling beneath you, it's easy to lose sight of who you are and what you stand for. But here's the harsh truth. No one is going to come and save you. Not your boss, not your family, not your friends. The only person who can get you out of the mess you're in is you. It all starts with discipline, the foundation that will rebuild your life no matter how broken you feel. Discipline isn't about being rigid or punishing yourself. It's about commitment. It's about showing up every single day even when you don't feel like it. It's about doing what needs to be done when nobody's watching, when there are no rewards, no applause. You do it because you owe it to yourself. And here's where the warrior spirit comes in. A true warrior doesn't bow to circumstances. A true warrior meets adversity head on. Picture a soldier on the battlefield. His mission is clear, but the odds are stacked against him. What keeps him going even when it seems impossible is the grit, the resilience to keep pushing forward no matter how many times he's knocked down. Life is no different. When everything is falling apart, the warrior digs deep into that reserve of inner strength, finds that last ounce of fight, and keeps moving. But it's not enough to simply fight. You must fight with purpose. Every choice, every action must be a step toward rebuilding your empire, your life, your peace of mind. This isn't a game of short-term survival. This is about long-term transformation. And in that journey, there will be moments when you feel like giving up. There will be voices telling you to quit, to accept defeat. But the true warrior doesn't listen to those voices. Instead, he listens to the voice inside that says, "Get up. You're not done yet. This is where you rise." Discipline is your shield. The warrior spirit is your sword. They are inseparable. Without discipline, your warrior spirit is aimless wandering in the dark. Without the warrior spirit, discipline becomes empty and meaningless. But when they are united, they become an unstoppable force. And that's what you need to become, the kind of man who, no matter the odds, keeps standing, keeps fighting, and keeps winning, because he knows that nothing in life is more powerful than a disciplined mind and an unbreakable spirit. The truth is, life won't get easier. It won't magically fix itself. But here's what will happen when you start embracing discipline, when you start acting like the warrior you are, you'll begin to see that you are in control. You can't control everything around you, but you can control how you respond. And in that control, you find your freedom. Now take a moment. Think about what's next for you. Think about the obstacles in your way, the challenges that seem impossible. And then make the decision, I will face them like a warrior. I will rise up no matter how many times I fall. Because at the end of the day, the warrior always wins. The only question is, will you be the one to get back up and fight again? You've probably heard people talk about power dynamics in relationships. But let me be clear, this isn't some abstract theory. This is the reality of every relationship you've ever been in, whether you noticed it or not. There's always a game being played, whether it's between you and her, you and the world, or even between your own emotions. Now, I know that might sound harsh, but let's be honest, power is what drives everything. When we talk about relationships, we're not just talking about love, affection, and connection. At the heart of it, there's a constant negotiation for emotional influence. Whether you want to admit it or not, you're constantly testing each other's emotional boundaries. You're testing who holds the power, who controls the narrative, who controls the feelings, and ultimately who feels safe. But here's where most men get it wrong. We've been taught that the way to win in relationships is by providing solutions, by being the fixer, the one who makes everything right, smooth and easy. That's not what she wants. She doesn't need you to solve all her problems. In fact, when you step into the role of the problem solver, every time you're stepping into a trap. Think about it, when you rush in to fix her emotions, to make everything perfect, you're not giving her the space to feel. You're not respecting her process, her struggle. Instead of offering emotional security, you're offering emotional management, and she doesn't need a manager. What she needs is a partner, someone who can hold space for her without panicking when the storm comes. A partner who doesn't flinch when the emotions get heavy. Think about it like this. If you're a rock in her storm, if you're the one who stays grounded while everything else swirls around you, then you're in control of your own power. Here's the secret no one tells. You control your emotions and you control the relationship. When you can maintain your calm, when you don't rush to fix things, when you allow her to express herself fully without judgment, you've won. You've created a space where she feels safe enough to truly be herself. And that's the power that nobody talks about, the emotional power that comes from steady presence and self-control. But it's not just about being calm, it's about creating distance. That's the second element of the power dynamic. Emotional distance is often seen as a bad thing, something that leads to coldness or detachment. But here's the truth. Emotional distance is essential for attraction. If you're always emotionally available, always present, always at her beck and call, you begin to lose your value. Why? Because you've given away your power. When she knows she can rely on you 100% of the time, when she knows you'll always be there to solve her problems, she starts taking you for granted. And when that happens, you're no longer emotionally attractive. The key here is creating that balance, showing her that you're there when it matters, but that you also have your own life, your own interests, and your own boundaries. That's when the dynamic shifts. That's when the power is in your hands. But here's the hardest part. You need to train yourself not to react. When she gets emotional, when she's upset or frustrated, your first instinct is probably to jump in and fix things to make her feel better, to ease her pain. But the real power is in holding back. Let her feel what she feels. Let her go through her emotional process without you trying to fix it. This is where emotional control becomes your greatest asset. When you stop chasing, stop trying to control everything, and just let her express herself, you allow her to process her emotions on her own terms. And that, my friend, is true power in a relationship. Because when she realizes that you're not panicking, that you're not being pulled into her emotional whirlpool, you become the calm in the storm. You become the one she can trust. In the end, the power game isn't about dominance or control. It's about creating an environment where both of you feel secure enough to be vulnerable, where both of you can express your emotions without fear of judgment, and where the foundation of trust is built. When you can maintain your emotional control and show that you're a stable force, that's when the power shifts in your favor. So, stop rushing to fix things. Stop seeking to manage her emotions. And instead, focus on managing your own. Become the emotional anchor she can rely on, and watch how the dynamics of the relationship shift in your favor. There's nothing more damaging to the human spirit than being overlooked. No one likes to feel invisible, unimportant, like the effort they've put into something has been completely disregarded. It's crushing when you pour everything you have into a relationship, your time, your energy, your heart, and then one day you're cast aside as if none of it ever mattered. I've been there. I know what it feels like when your worth is questioned by someone you trusted, by someone you thought would see you for who you are. The pain, the frustration, the anger, they all mix together in a potent cocktail of self-doubt. But here's something I've learned over the years. That moment is not the end of your story. Being overlooked doesn't make you worthless. It doesn't strip away your value. It's just a painful reminder that not everyone will recognize your worth, and that's okay. You don't need their recognition to know who you are. You need to find that recognition within yourself. When you're faced with the sting of being dismissed, you're presented with a choice to internalize that rejection and let it define you, or to reclaim your power and show the world and yourself that you are more than the opinions of others. At first, it's hard, really hard. When someone doesn't value you, it's natural to want to shrink back, to doubt yourself, to question if you've done something wrong. But understand this, you are not defined by someone else's perception of you. I remember the moment I chose to stand up for myself. It wasn't a grand gesture, nor was it an act of defiance. It was something much simpler. It was a decision. I decided that no one would diminish my worth. I decided that I would no longer seek validation from someone who didn't see me for who I was. I would find my value from within. You might be asking, how do you even begin to do that? Well, it starts with self-awareness. You need to look in the mirror and see yourself for who you truly are, not through the lens of someone else's judgment. You need to remind yourself of your strengths, your accomplishments, the person you've become, despite the obstacles. In those dark moments, I would sit with myself, reflect on everything I had been through, and I'd think, what am I proud of? What have I achieved that no one else can take away from me? Slowly, I began to rebuild my sense of self-worth. I didn't rely on external validation. I found pride in my own journey, my ability to keep going even when everything seemed stacked against me. The next step in reclaiming your value is to stop apologizing for your worth. You've already given enough, you've already shown up enough. You don't need to keep proving yourself to people who won't appreciate it. Instead, focus on the ones who will, the people who truly matter, who see you for who you are, and value the qualities that make you unique. It's easy to get caught up in the cycle of seeking approval. But approval doesn't come from the outside. It starts inside. It starts with knowing your worth and living in alignment with that truth. You cannot give others the power to define your self-worth unless you've given them permission to do so. I'll tell you this, and it's one of the most powerful lessons I've learned. When you stop seeking approval and start trusting yourself, everything changes. Your energy shifts. You start attracting the right people into your life, the ones who value you for who you truly are, not for what they think you can offer them. This isn't about arrogance or pride. It's about self-respect. It's about standing firm in who you are and not allowing anyone to strip that away from you. When you stop letting others dictate your worth, when you start choosing to walk in your truth, you'll notice a massive shift in how you feel about yourself and how others treat you. And here's the kicker. When you stop waiting for others to recognize your worth, you'll start recognizing it yourself. The validation you once craved from others becomes irrelevant. You don't need it. You become your own biggest supporter, and that's when your true power emerges. Reclaiming your worth isn't an overnight process. It takes time, reflection, and effort. But I can promise you this, it's worth it. The moment you stop letting others diminish your value is the moment you begin to rise. You'll be unstoppable because once you've found your worth and built it from the inside out, no one can ever take it from you again. Remember, the world will try to diminish you, but you are not defined by what others see in you. You define yourself. And when you realize that, when you internalize that, you will stand taller, you will feel stronger, and you will never let anyone look down on you again. So, if you're feeling overlooked, if you're struggling to see your own worth, take a deep breath. Look inside. Reclaim your power. Because you are enough. And it's time for you to start living like you believe it. You know, there's a moment in every man's life when he realizes something crucial. You can't pour from an empty cup. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a reality. When you allow people to push your boundaries, when you ignore your needs in favor of someone else's, you slowly start to lose yourself. That's when you begin to wonder, how did I end up here? How did I allow myself to become so lost? This happens when you let your boundaries dissolve. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others, they're about saying yes to yourself. They're the line between who you are and who others want you to be. And here's the truth. If you don't define your boundaries, others will define them for you. They'll dictate how much you give, how much you sacrifice, and how little you end up taking for yourself. But here's where everything changes. You get to take back control. When you start respecting your boundaries, you start respecting yourself. And when you respect yourself, your self-esteem goes through the roof. Suddenly you begin to realize that your value isn't determined by how much you give to others, but by how much you hold on to for yourself. This isn't about being selfish, it's about self-preservation. It's about understanding that you can't be there for anyone else if you're constantly running on empty. You must take care of yourself first. And that starts with setting clear boundaries. Here's where things get tricky. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're cutting people off or being cold. It's about emotional distance, the ability to step back and assess situations from a place of strength, not weakness. When you establish emotional detachment, you create space for yourself. You stop getting caught up in other people's emotional chaos. Instead of reacting to every little thing, you respond. And that's the key difference, responding with purpose, not reacting impulsively. This is where emotional independence comes into play. Emotional independence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not relying on someone else to regulate your emotions. You stop letting your happiness or stability depend on someone else's approval or behavior. You stop needing constant validation, and instead you find peace in your own worth. Your self-esteem no longer hinges on anyone else's opinion. You're strong enough to stand on your own, and when someone chooses to disrespect your boundaries or mistreat you, you simply walk away. I know it's not always easy. It's hard to say no, especially when you've spent so much time trying to please others. But here's the reality. When you allow your boundaries to be crossed, you lose yourself, piece by piece. Each time you let someone infringe on your space, you are telling yourself that you're not important enough to be respected. But when you start setting clear boundaries, when you start protecting your time, energy, and emotions, you send a powerful message not just to the people around you, but to yourself. You remind yourself that you matter, that your needs are just as important as anyone else's, and that you are worthy of respect. Now imagine the difference it makes in your life when you reclaim that power, when you stop apologizing for putting yourself first, when you stop feeling guilty for having standards, when you stop shrinking yourself to make others feel comfortable. That's when you'll see your confidence rise. You'll walk taller, speak more clearly, and you'll stop tolerating the things that once kept you small. And here's the powerful part. Once you've set your boundaries and reclaimed your emotional strength, you will begin to attract relationships that respect and honor your limits. No more drama, no more chaos. You'll have more peace, more stability, and more of the respect you deserve. Setting boundaries is not a one-time thing. It's a continuous process, a daily practice of reaffirming your worth, of saying no when you need to, and saying yes to what serves your highest good. It's about building a life where you're the one in control, not the people around you. When you reclaim your boundaries, you reclaim your life. So, if you've been allowing others to walk all over your boundaries, if you've been compromising your self-worth just to please others, it's time to stop. It's time to put yourself first. Because when you do, you'll be amazed at how much more you can give, not just to others, but to yourself. Start today. Reclaim your boundaries, your self-respect, and your emotional independence. You'll never look back. There's a powerful truth that many men fail to realize until it's too late. You owe it to yourself. We spend so much time trying to prove our worth to others, whether it's through our work, our relationships, or our actions, that we often forget the most important person we need to prove it to is ourselves. I've seen too many men lose themselves in the chaos of trying to please others, trying to live up to expectations, trying to win approval from everyone around them. And here's the harsh reality. No one will ever appreciate you the way you need to be appreciated until you do it for yourself first. Let's face it, we've all been there, putting everyone else's needs before our own, sacrificing our time, our energy, and our sanity for people who may not even see the value in what we're doing. But that's not the way to live. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you don't have. And you can't expect anyone to treat you with the respect you deserve until you start treating yourself with that same level of respect. You owe it to yourself to invest in your own well-being, your happiness, and your growth. You owe it to yourself to stop being the person who always gives, always sacrifices, and never receives anything in return. You owe it to yourself to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to prioritize your needs without guilt. You owe it to yourself to build the life you've always dreamed of, not for anyone else, but for you. Think about the choices you've made, the sacrifices you've given. What have you done for yourself lately? What have you done to show yourself that you're worth it? The truth is, you can't wait for someone else to validate your worth. It starts with you. Take a moment right now to ask yourself, what do I owe myself? The answer is clear: everything. You owe yourself the chance to be happy, to be strong, to be free from the weight of the past. You owe it to yourself to stand up and claim the life you were meant to live. And once you start honoring that, once you start showing up for yourself every single day, you'll begin to see the world treat you the way you deserve. Because here's the truth: you are worth it, and you owe it to yourself to prove that to no one else but you. In relationships, one of the most powerful qualities a man can possess is decisiveness. Too many men get caught up in the cycle of indecision, waiting for the perfect moment, seeking constant reassurance, second-guessing their every move. But the truth is, indecision is a silent killer in relationships. It creates uncertainty, confusion, and insecurity, and it leaves both you and your partner in a state of limbo. Here's what most men don't realize. Women are drawn to men who know what they want, who are clear in their intentions, and who can make decisions without hesitation. Being decisive doesn't mean you have to have everything figured out, but it does mean that you have the confidence to move forward with clarity, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about having a direction, a vision, and the willingness to lead, not by control, but by confidence. In relationships, this means taking responsibility for your actions, your emotions, and your connection with her. When you're decisive, you create an atmosphere of trust and respect. She'll know that she doesn't have to wonder about where you stand or what you're thinking. Your actions speak louder than words, and your ability to make decisions and take control of the situation will make her feel safe and secure. But being decisive is only one part of the equation. The other part is being proactive. Being proactive in a relationship means showing initiative, not waiting around for things to happen or for her to make the first move. It means taking responsibility for the growth of your relationship, whether it's through deep conversations, thoughtful gestures, or the simple act of being present. Proactivity is about showing up. It's about choosing to be emotionally available to invest in the relationship and to make moves that strengthen the bond between you two. Too often men sit back and wait for things to fall into place, hoping that the relationship will fix itself. But nothing worth having happens by chance. You have to be the one who sets the tone, who drives the connection forward. When you become more decisive and proactive, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop questioning your worth in the relationship, and she'll stop questioning your commitment. You'll both start operating from a place of strength, not weakness. And here's the beautiful irony: the more you show up with confidence and take the lead in building the relationship, the more she will trust you, respect you, and lean on you. So, ask yourself, are you taking the lead? Are you being proactive in your relationship? Or are you waiting for her to make the first move? Decide today that you will show up with clarity, with purpose, and with the confidence to lead. Because when you do, you're not just building a relationship, you're building a future. There's a unique kind of power that comes when a man decides to stand on his own 2 feet, when he chooses to take responsibility for his own life, his own happiness, and his own future. It's the kind of power that doesn't come from external validation or approval, but from within. For most of us, life isn't easy. We face setbacks, failures, and heartache. But what makes a man truly strong is not how he handles success, but how he rises from his failures. The moment you take control of your own destiny, you stop relying on anyone else for your sense of worth. You start defining who you are and how you will face the world. I've been there before, feeling lost, uncertain, and wondering if I had what it took to rebuild my life. But I've learned something invaluable. You can rebuild yourself. It doesn't matter how far you've fallen. It doesn't matter how broken you might feel. What matters is the decision to get up, the decision to no longer let circumstances dictate who you are. The moment you make that choice, something shifts inside you. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. It's about taking the experiences, good, bad, and ugly, and using them as fuel to rebuild your foundation. When you stop looking for external answers and start looking inward, you tap into a well of strength you never knew you had. And as you build yourself up, you start to realize something incredible. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your worth is already solid. You just need to show up for yourself. There's an incredible sense of freedom that comes with this kind of self-reliance. You stop being a victim of your circumstances. You stop living for the approval of others. You start doing things for you, and when you do, that life begins to unfold in ways you never imagined. You make decisions based on your values, not because you're trying to meet expectations. You stop seeking validation because you've already validated yourself. And here's the kicker. When you become self-reliant, you start to attract the kind of people who respect and value you for who you are, not what you can do for them. When you're rooted in your own strength, your own purpose, you exude a confidence that others can't help but respect. So, if you're feeling lost right now, if you're struggling to find your way, remember this. You have everything you need inside you. It's time to stop looking outside for answers. The real power comes from within. When you embrace that power, you become the kind of man who doesn't just survive, but thrives. You become the architect of your own life, strong, self-sufficient, and unstoppable. There's something about a man who can maintain emotional strength in the face of chaos that's magnetic. It's not about being cold or distant. It's about being anchored. When everything around you is spinning out of control, when emotions run high and tensions rise, the ability to remain calm, grounded, and unwavering in your presence speaks volumes. This kind of emotional strength doesn't come from repressing your feelings or pretending that everything is fine. It comes from understanding and owning your emotions, then choosing how to respond, not react. Real emotional strength is about controlling your impulses, staying centered, and showing up, even when it's difficult. This is where most men go wrong. We're taught to suppress our vulnerability, to act tough, to push emotions aside. But true emotional strength comes from being real, not pretending to be invincible, but knowing that you can handle whatever comes your way. It's about being secure in who you are, no matter what's happening around you. When you lead with this kind of emotional strength, something changes in the way people see you. You become a steady force in their lives, someone they can rely on, someone who doesn't flinch when the pressure's on. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about showing presence, showing that you're strong enough to hold the space for others and strong enough to hold it for yourself. In every situation, especially when things are at their worst, remember this. The most powerful thing you can do is remain calm. When you master this, you unlock a power within you that no one can take away.